What happens when you go from running one business to five all in the span of a year? Let me tell you, it's a roller coaster. This year, I shifted from running one company that did about $600,000 in sales to running five companies that are collectively generating about $12 million annually. And it has been a year of massive growth. And with that growth came, honestly, some of the highest of highs and some of the hardest lows that I've ever experienced. So this journey wasn't all highs. There were plenty of tough lessons learned along the way. And in this video, I'm going to share with you the 14 biggest lessons that I have learned over the past year of explosive growth. So whether you are thinking about buying a business or scaling through acquisition or just leveling up your entrepreneurial game, these lessons will help you navigate the highs and the hard times. Before we jump into it, I would love to hear from you. What's the biggest lesson you've learned in your business journey? Share it in the comments. Let's learn from each other. As an entrepreneur who's been in this game for a long time, I thought I knew the challenges and the rewards that came with rapid growth, but this year has pushed way beyond that with anything I've ever done before. So what I'm going to share with you are, they're still sometimes a little raw. Sometimes I still feel tender around some of these, but I feel like they're things that I wish someone had warned me or told me so that I would know what to anticipate and I would know when I was still on the right track and things were just hard versus when I was actually veering off course and needed to course correct. So if you stick with me through it, you're going to have some really transparent conversations, some very honest and I think wise advice, and you're going to have a really clear plan of what it is going to look like for you to step into massive growth and acceleration. So lesson number one is that just because you can doesn't mean that you should. One of the things that I learned this year was that I have a tendency to be like, oh, I can do that, I can do that, I can do that. And just because you have the capability does not mean that you have the capacity. They're not the same thing whatsoever.
They're all totally different.
So before you jump into anything new, any kind of ventures, I want you to really ask yourself the question, how much effort will this really take? And then add to it, because I found that I've consistently underestimated how much work something is going to take. And then look at your pace. Are you pacing yourself and are you setting realistic expectations? Now, on one side, sometimes I think we overcommit and we do too much. And then on the other side, I think that we stop the effort when we hit the point of discomfort. And that's one thing I've had to learn this year is that I can successfully work in discomfort. It's not something that's sustainable over the next 10 years, but when you're in massive growth, you kind of have to be willing to give it what it takes and find ways to up the self-care to balance out the fact that you've upped the work and you're spending more time outside of your comfort zone. I have never in my life spent so much time outside of my comfort zone as I have in the past year. And I kept thinking like I was either going to get comfortable with it or I was just going to get better at it. And what I've learned is I've gotten better at managing the discomfort, but I am still frequently outside of my comfort zone and I am still frequently in over my head, but I'm getting better at managing that space and learning how to find the things that I need in order to be successful each day.
I'm going to reach heights of success.
Second thing that I have learned, merging companies is tough. It's harder than it looks on paper. This year we took two marketing agencies and we merged them and put them into one super agency. And it's not all about the systems and the processes. It's also about people and culture. And the synergies that you anticipate that look like they're there on paper might not actually be there when you get into it. And so taking over someone else's business, far easier than merging two companies together. And I've learned that I need to give myself a longer runway when that's what we're doing. Next up, lesson number 3, fast does not equal good. In my rush to grow, I learned that speed isn't everything. Sometimes you do have to slow down in order to speed up. And fast doesn't always equal good. Good equals good. And sometimes that requires you taking a step back, really looking at everything that you've got going on and figuring out what you actually need to do to move things forward. Number 4, this one's been hard and I feel like it keeps smacking me in the face. Clarity and transparency is critical in everything that you do. Specifically here, I want to talk about financing. So one key policy that I've held on to is that you can't rob Peter to pay Paul. And when you're managing multiple businesses, it's really tempting to move resources around, but it's critical to keep financial transparency and fairness from one business to the next. And that overall arching theme of fairness and transparency is going to come back around in a little bit here. So let's shift into the management and the leadership lessons. Lesson number 5 is don't abdicate management. One mistake that I made this year was thinking that I could step back and let things kind of run themselves once I had put an initial process in place. What I didn't understand is that it takes more time and more steps to slow down and build a process that someone else can run. A lot of times the first iteration of the process is what it would take for you to be able to run it, but that's with all of your institutional knowledge and the things that you're holding in your head. When you're trying to get that off to somebody else, you actually have to run it for a while, then you have to run it with them, and then you have to watch as they run it. And until they're running it at the same level that you would be running it at, you don't actually get to pull out of that area. So just giving myself more time to really transition things off of my plate and make sure that they're running smoothly before I shift my energy into something else. It's been a critical lesson. 6, managing stress and taking care of life outside of business. So with growth comes stress. Managing it for me has been a big undertaking this year because it's not just about the fact that I'm running all of these businesses. It's also about the fact that I need to balance my personal life. I need to take care of myself physically. I wanted to show up in great ways for my family. And sometimes I felt like I was so in my head all of the time that I could not turn it off.
Okay. All right, I need to get it together.
So I've learned that I've really got to make that a priority, that balance of making sure everything in my life is managed and good is so critical and important. On the flip side of that, there have been many times this year where I've been stressing about whether or not I'm showing up the way that my family needs me to, when in reality, my family is fine. And so I found that like asking them questions and keeping the dialogue open and communicating priorities, there's been some things that I've been holding on to as critical that they don't actually care about, and it's not actually what gives them value or makes them feel valued. So I'm trying to spend my time really intentionally in the areas that matter most, and that is happening at home and it's happening at work. Next up on the list is creating buy-in for everyone on the team and moving people out sooner. This has been my most heartbreaking lesson of the year, and it still feels tender and raw. This year has really taught me the importance of creating buy-in early on with, again, that clarity and that transparency about what is actually expected. And then when people don't step up to that mark, moving them out sooner if it's not a fit. Trying to keep people on board and have them have a different perspective of what you are wanting than what you actually have is a recipe for disaster. And the longer people stay when they're not meeting your expectations, the more actual hurt that it builds up. I think sometimes we think that we're being nice and we're being kind to give people more chances and more chances. But the reality is working in an environment where you know you're not succeeding is painful. Having frustration build up towards that person that you think is a great person, but they're not working out is painful. And I feel like the longer you wait, the more all of that has a chance to build up and just be negative for both of you. So I work really hard to create buy-in and to create clarity and to verbalize all of the expectations. I try to have the hard conversations up front, get everyone on the same page. And then if it's not working out, we've got to address that more quickly. Still hard for me. I still want to give way too many chances. All right, number 8, you've got to have key performance indicators, KPIs for everyone in your team, and you've got to monitor them. This was one of our challenges in our companies this year. We weren't really managing well to KPIs. Instead, we were managing tasks. Did you get this done? Did you get this done? Did you get this done? And what it was doing was creating this culture of we are a task-based culture and that's how we measure success instead of we are a results-based culture and that's how we manage success. And it's funny because I've never really thought of myself as a micromanager, but I've also never had that much to manage. And so I found myself this year in the first half micromanaging just because there were so many things that needed to get done and balls were getting dropped. And what I realized was that wasn't actually the way to fix it. It never is. The way to fix it is actually to empower the people who own that role, to create KPIs where they can monitor success, and then to give them the support and the resources that they need and the structure that they need to be successful. But then you kind of have to let them manage it. And your job as a manager is to manage that return and report. Are the KPIs happening? And making changes when they're not. Number 9, balancing results with people. It's so easy to focus on the bottom line when you're growing a business, but what this year has taught me is that the people and the bottom line have to be balanced and they have to be in equal contribution. I have a tendency to put people ahead of the profits, and when it's not working, it's really bad for everybody in the business because then you're putting everything at risk for everyone. So in some leadership organizations, you put the profits ahead of the people and then you have this revolving door, and that is going to also affect the bottom line of profit. So it's about creating a great culture and an environment, but part of that great culture and environment is high performance and accountability to results. And if they're not stepping into that space, then they're just not going to be a long-term fit, no matter how much you may like them. Some of these lessons have been hard to learn. Here's my personal development lessons that I've gotten over the year. Number 10 up on the list is to be grateful and happy in hard times. Growth is not always easy, and it's important to find gratitude in those moments because I can do hard things, and I can do hard things while being unhappy, stressed out, overwhelmed, or I can do hard things while being happy and excited and joyful. And that's where I want to spend my time. So every day I am making that choice to recognize all of the areas of discomfort or anxiety or stress or overwhelm that I feel, and then just look at it and be like, okay, that's what is inside of my body right now. Let's move that to the outside. I'm choosing happiness. I'm choosing joy today.
Choose happiness.
And I'm going to do my absolute best. And then when the stress builds up again, it's like I just have to go let out a little bit of steam and step back into that space of gratitude and joy. All right, next up, number 11, separate your performance from your personal fulfillment. This has been a big lesson this year, to separate out what I'm actually accomplishing and not have that be tied to my happiness, not have that be tied to how I view my personal self-worth. Like those have to be two separate things in order for me to be able to be successful. Otherwise, I get too down on myself when I'm struggling with the tasks or struggling with the responsibilities in front of me, and it has a tendency to shut me down. So separating out those two, always important, but especially in rapid growth, it's essential. Number 12, you're not the best at everything. You have got to delegate. I had to accept that I'm really not the best at everything, and that's okay. So handing off things sooner, trusting others to take the reins, getting really clear on the fact that my job is to lay the foundation for them, pass it off, work it with them side by side, then let them take it and then pull out. That process of knowing how to delegate has helped me actually figure out what I need to hold on to longer and what I can give off faster, because as soon as it's being done well, I can completely take my hands off of that and just watch the fact that it is continuing to be done well. We are not the best at everything, and the more that you try to do it all, the more that you're going to slow and hinder progress. Now, if you're thinking this seems contradictory, the fact that you need to not abdicate, but you also are not the best at everything, welcome to the conundrum that is leadership. It's like we tend to swing from one side of the pendulum to the other, and you have to find this really nice middle ground for it to even work. All right, lesson number 13. Therapy's good. Entrepreneurship can be really isolating, and I realized this year that therapy isn't just good, it's really necessary. It helps you to manage your stress, helps you to stay healthy, keep perspective through the ups and downs. And I actually attend therapy with my business partners so that we can make sure that we keep those lines of communication open and that we're moving forward in the same way. And we have a sounding board to bounce things off if we're not in alignment. It's been super helpful. Way less arguing and feeling like we're were fighting against each other. And now we just are clearly moving in the same direction, fighting for the same thing. And finally, my last lesson is really paying attention to ROI of time and focus and impact. I have learned to focus on where I make the most impact. And when you're running multiple businesses, you have to be really strategic about your time. So asking yourself the question, like, where can I move the needle the most and push forward revenue, and then spending your time in those specific areas and not getting pulled in to all of the other things that are going on, because it's really easy for your team to be like, Amy could do that. Amy could do that. We need your help, Amy. And then you find yourself spread so thin that you're not actually creating impact for anybody. This year of growth has been super intense. It's been very rewarding. It's been full of lessons. So whether you are scaling your business or you're thinking about acquisition, I hope that these 14 lessons help you to navigate that journey a little bit easier, because it's not just about getting bigger with your companies. It really is about getting better, feeling more capable, having your business be run in a more smart and smooth way, and making something that's really going to be sustainable over the long haul. So which lesson resonates the most with you? Have you gone through periods of rapid growth? Let me know in the comments, and don't forget to like, to subscribe, and hit that notification bell so that we can all keep growing together.